Right.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the Montgomery County Planning Commission monthly board meeting of July 9th to order. Let the record show that we have a full board in attendance in the room.
That's great. That's great.
No
Thank you.
absentees this month, so I appreciate everybody showing up today, given the agenda and emails back and forth earlier last week. So thank you. With that, I'm going to see if there's any board comments from board members. Seeing none, I want to take, is there a motion to approve the Montgomery County Planning Commission's regular monthly board meeting minutes of June 11, 2025? So moved. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Are any comments or corrections on the meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Scott, did you have an announcement before?
Normally I do this during the director's report, but we have a new staff member who won't be here at that time. So I wanted to introduce Russell Lavolsi. He is a transportation planner. He comes to us from Temple University and also interned at DVRPC as well as MCPC, if anyone remembers back in 2021.
We saw the inside and still wanted to come.
I know.
That's good. It's a good sign.
No, it's great when you ask. It's great for us when we know someone and then they come through and go. Welcome.
Yeah, well,
Thank you, Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Nice to meet everyone.
Take him to the Temple Fight Song?
They can give us a good football team and then maybe we'll do it.
There you go.
That's not.
Make more.
Oh, yeah.
We'll never hear that song.
Yeah. Okay, are there any, we're gonna move on to public comment. Are there any public comment from anybody in the room? Before we get started. How you doing? Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Shall I talk from here?
You can talk from wherever you want to, sure. Just give us your name and the municipality you're from.
My name is Steve Trebovic. I'm a resident of Montgomery County, Upper Merion Township, Navy veteran, and avid bicyclist. And that's why I'm here to talk about the missing link in the Schuylkill River Trail.
Okay.
We have proposed, it's been a number, shall I go on?
Yeah.
Been a number of years, maybe 5 or more, where Montgomery County has not completed, or as far as I know, done any work to complete the trail from where it now currently ends in Chester County over the 422 bridge with a bike lane, and it ends there. We recently found out that the planners for Parks and Recreation have signed a contract to complete the trail, but it won't be started until January. And it's been any number of years, maybe 5, when it doesn't seem like anything was done in Montgomery County to complete the link. That the Schuylkill River Trail runs from southwest Philadelphia all the way up to Reading and beyond, and it's completed except for here in Montgomery County. And I've sent letters through the state representative's office. I know Pottstown, the borough would like to see something happen. They've complained or asked for information on how long it's going to take. They have shop owners and businesses that have been losing business, I think, and they've gone to their state representative to talk about that. But nothing has happened. So it's going to be several more years, maybe, in my view, before the current plan for the link is actually completed. So what we have proposed and haven't heard much back from Parks and Recreation is that a temporary detour be installed, which is we use part of the 422 exit ramp up to Hartman Boulevard. There's a 11-foot wide shoulder there. And it could easily be used as a temporary fix to get people back into Pottstown area and complete the link. But PennDOT would have to come in. It's a limited access highway, and people have said, well, PennDOT won't allow bikes on a limited access highway, but actually it's been done a number of times. There's a bike route J out of Harrisburg that goes the longest designated bike route. It's on limited access highways, US 11 and other roads that are limited access.
Right.
They don't have they have shoulders, but they don't have, and maybe rumble strips, but they don't have any other protective support. And that's what we would like to see happen. So that another few years doesn't go by before the link is completed.
But let me try to get you an answer because.
Yes.
Let me try to get you an answer since the head of trails is, Bill, you wanna address this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna stand at the lectern here so everyone can see me. Steve, thanks for coming in. I trust you got my email response.
Yeah, did you get my request for more information?
Well, frankly, I don't know what more information I could provide. I thought it was pretty detailed in the response, but let me just address a few of the things that you brought up.
Let's let Bill address it first.
So I just want to address a couple of things in terms of what you just said, including that we haven't done any work on this over the last several years. That's just not true. We've been working on this literally since the day that I arrived at the county. It's not a simple engineering solution. There are environmental constraints, including a endangered turtle that we need to work around. So we've been working very actively with this. There were also cultural things that we needed to work around with PennDOT and PADEP. There was Verizon lines that we needed to have relocated up to Industrial Highway, which we did. So I just want to assure you that we've been doing plenty of work on this, and it's ongoing actually to this day. I mean, we were just talking about it yesterday. In terms of your comment about it taking several more years to happen, that's not true. That we awarded the contract this past winter, and we had to delay it because there was an issue with our NPDES permit, which delayed it from starting in the spring. So now we're going to start it next year because starting it this fall would cause us to take a winter break, which you don't want to do in construction. You don't want to start moving dirt and then stop and then restart in the spring. The turtle restriction goes from April 15th to October 15th, meaning we need to put our silt fencing in for that job either between October 15th and April 15th. That's a very limited window. And when we missed it in the spring because of the complications with the permit, that automatically pushed the project to this fall. And that's when we had to make the decision whether to start in the fall or push it to the spring or early winter, I should say. And that's why we chose that route to start it then. In terms of responses, I did just mention that I responded to your email about the proposed alternative to provide a temporary route up to Arm and Hammer Boulevard. And I was very detailed in that response. And some of the things that I put in there, which I'll just reiterate, is that there are a number of factors that would have informed our decision not to pursue that. And I'm going to list them. Number one, PennDOT is never going to allow bikes on their roadway. They're not going to do it because it's dangerous. And, you know, our transportation people can weigh in on this, but even if there's precedent for doing that, the process of trying to get their approval to do that would literally take months. And by the time we pursue that route, we're already going to be starting the project that we're going to pursue now. Secondly, there's private property that temporary route would need to go through on the other side of the guardrail.
That's one solution.
Right, let me finish.
Sorry, we worked through, there's a give and take here. You've given your comments, Bill is responding, and I would like to continue to respond to your questions.
It's private property, so if you're on the non-road side of the guardrail, we would need to gain rights to that private property to build the trail, to build this temporary fix. That would require a temporary easement or something like that. Again, time, months, negotiation, money, just not worth the effort. And then just from an engineering standpoint, to try and put a temporary trail on the non-road side of the guardrail, it would require engineering, it would require permits, it would require construction, and it would require an immense amount of time to make that happen. Again, given that we're gonna be starting this in a few months, it just doesn't make fiscal or logistical sense to do all of that. So I know your argument's probably gonna be that let's just put it on the road side of the guardrail, then we don't have to deal with all those other issues. I just don't think that that's gonna happen. And you're welcome to pursue it, but our opinion was that that wasn't a route that we wanted to push.
And honestly, if that was an interest of political leaders such as representatives of the area, they could address that with PennDOT and go that route if they so choose. We're happy to meet, facilitate talk, but Bill's rationales are 100% real.
They're using it now, bicyclists, there's no way,
So prior to this, there was no connection, but people would use the Kime Street Bridge,
yes,
which was illegal. That was not an open bridge.
Right.
So in reality, there's been no change or reduction of access. People who were using it before, I understand that took place and that was convenient for those who did it. But it also wasn't something that government could put anything behind or be liable for, or
I don't understand.
Hold on a second. Bill, how long, when the construction's expected to start this spring?
They're gonna start doing things like one calls and the preliminary work at the end of January. We think this is probably gonna take 6 to 8 months to build.
So by the fall of next year,
We think that it'll be done in like August next year. So.
Okay.
That's an estimate of when it will be completed.
Well, sure, there's a lot of factors that go into.
That's right.
construction.
Well,
So there's nothing we
yeah.
can do about those
So
factors, so.
I was a planner and worked for the federal government. I'm a recovering federal employee.
Right.
So when I had to come up with an estimate of when something would be completed, I pulled it out of my ass.
well, I can assure you, I can assure you, I'm not pulling that out of there.
Hold on a second.
So,
I appreciate your comment, appreciate you coming in. Bill has responded to you by email, you've responded to him, there's an open.
He hasn't answered my email about why we
yeah,
can't use.
Steve, I did.
But okay.
I did.
Not,
when-
Bill has responded, there was an open invitation, if there wants to be a conversation between the elected officials in that area and discussing a alternative or a temporary alternative related to being on a PennDOT road. The county planning commission is welcome, has offered to be involved in those discussions, but we don't control the PennDOT, we don't control state roads. So, but that would be something that would have to be brought on by either the elected officials in that area to discuss with PennDOT.
Is what you're telling me is this planning commission would not be willing to approach PennDOT for a temporary,
No, because as Bill said, he thinks the time, his and the transportation section.
so if I
believes
wind up
Let
going,
me finish, you asked me questions, please let me finish.
I thought you were.
They have made the estimate that, and I think they're right, that working through PennDOT would take longer to have that happen between now and the actual time that the construction would actually start on the project that's already been let. Am I correct? Is that what?
That's our thinking, even if they were
Yeah,
to consider it to be.
PennDOT, several people on this board have dealt with PennDOT, and there's no doubt in my mind that getting a PennDOT highway occupancy permit, whatever it may be, to get on that road, to put a temporary bike lane would be a longer process.
I want to iterate, that's a limited, he's called limited access highway. It is technically an exit ramp
Yes.
off the highway. And show me an exit ramp with a shoulder that bikes are allowed on, and then that'll be precedent, but I don't.
So if there's a conversation to be had with PennDOT and you can go to with the elected officials in that area, the planning commission sounds like would be happy to be involved in that conversation. Is there any other public comment? One for agenda. Thank you. So with that, I report the agenda item, which is community planning assistance contracts, and I'm going to call on Mike Narcowich and Eric back today to discuss Bridgeport Borough and Red Hill Borough. Morning, Mike.
Okay, good morning, Stephen. We are proposing approval of 3-year planning assistance contract renewals for those 2 boroughs, which are managed by Matt Lubitz. The Bridgeport contract renewed on July 1st and will expire on June 30th, 2028. Contract involves continued comp plan implementation, including updating the borough's subdivision and land development ordinance, preparing specialized land use studies, developing guidelines, street guidelines for 4th Street, and any other council directed work. The Red Hill Borough contract will begin on August 1st and expires on July 31st, 2028. The work program for that contract focuses upon council directed services. The borough is currently considering an update to off-street parking standards, development of requirements for green parking, development of Main Street design guidelines, and a sidewalk connections plan. Contract costs, including the municipal and county shares, are detailed in the proposed resolution.
Mike, who's the planners for Bridgeport and who's the planner for Red Hill?
Matt Lubitz and Matt Lubitz.
Anything else, Mike?
That's all.
Or take any questions or comments from board members on the, we got the motion in the record. So before us, we have MCPC Resolution 25-7.1, Community Planning Assistance Contract Resolution of July 9th, 2025. It includes the two contracts, 676 Bridgeport Borough and 695 Red Hill Borough. As Michael had talked about the length of contracts and also the cost is in the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The move, is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, are there any negative votes in approving community planning assistance contract resolution? Thanks, Mike, appreciate it. Next up is our open space grant program. And I want to call Bill and Ellen. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me and Ellen this morning to talk about some exciting news that has been a long effort, and I think we're almost there. And we have a name for our upcoming open space grant program, and we're calling it Montco Forever Green. That's very intentional. The Montco is pretty self-explanatory. It's open space preservation in Montgomery County. Forever is a nod to the perpetuity of permanently protected open space, which is what this program is focusing on. And green is talking about open space and green spaces around the county in all different types of settings. So this is something that we've been actively working on for the last several months. And so I'm going to describe to you, and then Ellen's going to come in toward the end and do a little bit more of the presentation, some of the basic structure of the program, a little bit of history of open space in the county, and then we're going to show you some of the materials that we've developed as part of it. So I guess I can pull this. So everyone knows, especially Dulcie, that Montgomery County has a great history of open space preservation over the last 3 decades, really. In 1993, between 1993 and 2003, we had the 10-year, $100 million open space program. That was important, not just in terms of the amount of open space that was preserved as part of that program, but it also created a culture of open space protection in the county that was carried forward after that initial effort. And that energy and culture was certainly instilled in the county leaders, but it was also something that the public became aware of and started to understand the importance of protecting open space around the county. That effort was followed up with another 10-year, $150 million program called Greenfields, Green Towns, which you've probably heard of. And that carried on the tradition of the 93 program. And again, scores of open space projects established around the county, immensely successful, and just really sort of cemented Montgomery County's reputation as a leader in open space preservation and its commitment toward it. Since then, and including today, we continue to provide open space funding, but it's not, I would say, as robust as it was during those two initial efforts during that 20-year period. We provide open space grants to nonprofit land trusts and conservation organizations, as well as municipalities who come to us to ask for a grant. And it's funded through the capital improvement plan or the capital budget every year. And typically that budget ranges from $2.5 million to $3.5 million each year. I will say that typically we don't spend all of that money. And that was part of the reason why we started to think, like, what can we do to get more interest in this program so that we could give all that money. We want to, if we have the money allocated, we want to give it away. So a few of the issues that we've identified about the current way we provide these funds is that there's a general lack of awareness around the county that this money is even available to them. Now, there are certainly people around the county, including our land trust universe of the Wissahickon Trails and Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust, Heritage Conservancy, and Natural Lands. They all know we have this money. There are a handful of municipalities who also know we have this money, and they've come to us and come back to us to ask for grants. But I would say the vast majority of our municipalities don't even know this money exists. And so we think that's part of the reason why we don't spend all the money every year. And so there's a general lack of widespread awareness. And we think that that's resulted in inequitable distribution of our open space money. We also think that our definition of open space might be a little bit too narrow. We typically look at open space, or people commonly perceive it as large expanses of undeveloped land. Well, open space does include areas like that, but it also includes that vacant building lot in the middle of Norristown, where if you were to clean it and plant it and put benches there and plant trees, that could provide a place for real respite for someone living in the middle of an urban environment. So we think our current definition might be a little bit too narrow, so we want to expand it. And then our current program doesn't have an official match, but we have an informal request when people come to us for funds where we say, if you're going to ask for $100,000 of open space funds, you need to show us that you have a match equivalent to that. So it's a one-to-one match. That's a very onerous burden on municipalities that might not have a big operating budget or have reserves or the ability to partner and raise funds. It's fine for people who know how to raise funds and find that extra money, but it's hard for organizations and municipalities that don't. So we feel that those are some of the core issues that we're currently facing, and that's part of the reason why we moved to formalize the program. Just a quick snapshot. I know you've seen this map before, but this is a map of all the permanently protected open space around the county. It's just over 43,000 acres, which is a lot. And that pie chart in the bottom left shows how that protected open space is distributed in terms of ownership, from municipal through county, state, federal, land trust owned land, and of course, private conservation easements are considered permanently protected. And this also includes our protected farmland. So it's a nice mosaic. You can see that a lot of it's in the western part of the county. That's for obvious reasons. But you know, there are certainly opportunities in other parts of the county. We want to tap into that potential. So the core tenets of Montco Forever Green are what you see on the screen right now. We want to create a more structured and manageable program. We want to get the word out, getting to that issue that I was talking about earlier of how we don't feel like people know this money is available. We want to make our municipal leaders, our nonprofit partners aware that this money is available. And Ellen's going to talk about a couple of ways that we're going to do that. We're going to require a lower match than we have historically, and a lower match relative to the other primary source of open space funds in the Commonwealth, which is DCNR's C2P2 program. DCNR requires a one-to-one match. $100,000 request, show us that you have $100,000 in your pocket for the match. We wanted to lower our required match so that these funds were more manageable and that match was more obtainable by some of our municipalities. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we want to expand our definition of open space to include more areas.
Bill, what was the match for the open space program in 1993 to 2013?
I don't know that. Dulcie, do you know offhand?
It was at 10%, and when we did the Greenfields Green Towns program,
we took a look at the need of communities and there was some fluctuation there. But it was a very generous match both
I think it
times.
was like 10 or 20%. I remember we bought some property in Abington during one of those programs. And I can't remember, but it was like 10 or 20%.
Yeah, which is obviously much more manageable than a
Yeah.
higher match. I'm sort of holding back what our match is gonna be till I get to that slide, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to have a little bit of, what's that?
What's the match gonna be for the new program?
Hold on. So in terms of eligible projects for this program, again, we want to hit rural, suburban, and urban settings. This can include natural undeveloped land, nature preserves, public parks. It could include a vacant lot in an urban setting or even in a suburban setting. Community gardens, where, you have to broaden your thinking of what open space looks like and feels like to people. Someone in Pottstown or Norristown is going to view open space very differently than someone who lives in Lower Frederick, for example. So we want to make sure that we're capturing that full perception of open space. So that includes things like urban green spaces. In terms of uses and activities, of course, it will include passive recreation. We're saying limited active recreation. We don't want to be funding softball complexes, which although they're important, but that's not where we want to direct this money. But if there's some limited active rec on a piece of property, that would certainly be considered. Ecosystem services, things like flood mitigation, carbon sequestration, wildlife habitat, improving water quality, all of those environmental services are uses that we want to promote on the land that we fund with this money. And then we put respite too, because we think that providing places for people to go and get away and feel better and clear their heads is really important as well.
What do you mean by limited active recreation? How do you envision that?
Well, it's a great question because this is something that we wrestle with literally every time we get a request. So, well, first of all, it all depends on how you define active rec. So, which is a debate that many people love to have. So, we consider active rec as recreation that requires the development of like facilities. So a baseball field, a playground probably, or could be argued that it's active, a tennis court, a basketball court, things where versus a green field where it's just grass and you can go out and kick a soccer ball around casually. That's what the difference between passive and active rec would be. We initially had in the guidebook for the program, we said passive and active rec, and we kind of were like, do we really want to be supporting like full-blown active rec? And our decision was no. And so we added the word limited so that we had the discretion when these grant requests come in to assess the degree to which the request is really going after active, a piece of land that's going to be used for active recreation. I think the short answer, Steve, is that I think we're going to use our discretion what that might look like.
Right, and I by far not the semantics person over here, but limited to the activity or is the limited to the amount of space that it takes up?
Yeah, it could be both.
Okay.
Like intensity of use is, yeah. I mean, look, if you have an open piece of grass and there are 200 kids out there playing, and people put up cones and they're playing soccer games, does that suddenly become active rec? I mean, some could argue that it is, even though it's not technically an official lined soccer field. That's where it gets just a little gray.
And I only bring that up because I remember in the debate we'd had when I was on the board in Abington about the piece of land we got there that was across the street from Avalthorpe, that at that time it could only be passive recreation. And there was talk about why couldn't they put maybe one small ball field on there, which would be right across the street, and leave the rest of the property, which portion of it was in floodplain anyhow, wasn't going to be developed regardless. And that was just not possible at the time, which is why I'm trying, if there's some rationale to making a connection to something else, is there a way to integrate some of that active recreation within it? Not necessarily, I agree with you, we don't want to start building softball complexes or ball field complexes or football complexes, I get that. So, but there is the integration of two would also invite more use of the passive recreation areas. Right, so.
But the other thing is, I think the balancing of our implementation grant program does look at functional activities on open space. And that is a way to do it. I mean, when you look at the context, I mean, is Frisbee golf, if there's cones, that might be it, but it's going to be the context of it. And the other thing is when you are using those fields for active recreation that we think of as soccer fields or baseball fields, there's often stuff put on the land or it's compacted, so it kind of balances the natural infrastructure of the land versus the use of the land, and it just creeps into the next level of, a change. And we want to avoid that because that, once stuff starts moving that way, it's really hard.
Agreed. Yeah, at a minimum, it should always, that active use, whatever that might look like or as proposed, should always be secondary, I would say, to the passive or traditional open space use.
That's a really important, that's a very good way to message it.
Yeah, maybe we should think about that too. You good?
He lives in these
He's waiting,
ways.
he's waiting for that percentage. He's waiting for it.
Keep going.
No.
I have a
It's a good question.
It's a great question.
opinion. Once again, I don't want to see us, I'm not looking for us to be funding, large plots of land that are created into these sport complexes, outdoor sport complexes. That's not my point. I think there's definitely something to be said for combining some activity with a passive open space. You also talked about some of these areas like Norristown and Pottstown, or I would even say some of these, a lot of the eastern municipalities, because they're more developed, that having pocket parks that have a playground in it, or pocket parks that might have a small ball field or a basketball court as a small portion of it has some merit, because it does invite activity that would also lead into the passive portion of it.
Absolutely.
The passive portion that much more viable.
Yeah.
And these areas have limited property opportunities, so if they're not doubling up on uses, then they're probably underutilizing the limited space that they have.
So we have other programs.
Recognizing that.
The two places that I know of in Abington, I go back to it, is they're very rarely used. One of them, I'm sure, is not used at all, the one across from Applethorpe, because there have been no trails put in there. It was a preserved piece of land. The other one is in the middle of a affluent neighborhood in Meadowbrook. It connects some, two sides of two roads. But no trails have really been cut in there to create. I think people use it because they cross between it. But still, I mean, that's, anyhow.
Yeah.
I'm done.
No, you're targeting a really important question that we've been wrestling with. And honestly, I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on our part as these applications come in to start weighing some of these issues, and we're going to have to make some decisions about it. So you're right on. Okay, so here's the basic program structure. The application is going to be formalized with uniform requirements and uniform criteria to review them. The applications are going to be accepted on a rolling basis. We decided against a May 1 application deadline because the nature of open space is that urgency can crop up suddenly and imminently. Something's proposed for development. We wanted to give applicants the ability to apply at any time. As I said, all 62 municipalities can apply, and all conservation nonprofits. The grant amounts will range from $25,000 at a minimum to $500,000 max. Here's the match, 25%. So it'll be 25% of the grant award, $100,000 request, $25,000 match. The applicants will be able to use eligible costs to meet that match. So if they need an appraisal or something like that, that can be used toward the match. The use of funds, fee title, and conservation easement acquisitions, all of them must be in perpetuity. The source of the grant funds, as I said, is the capital budget for the county. We're going to start initially with a $2 million pot of money for this. Public access is generally required because if it's public money, the public should have the ability to access the property. If it's a property that's being preserved for some sensitive ecological reason, like there's a sensitive plant habitat or something where, having people on there might threaten it, we would consider that and whether public access was required. That's rare. We've had one of those since I've been here, but we want to leave that option open if it's appropriate.
Can the match funds be public, private?
Sure, yeah, they can be private donations to other public funds. So in terms of process, this is not radically different than what we do now, especially in the back end of it, but there's going to be a pre-app that all interested applicants will submit. We'll provide feedback based on some of the basic information they provide. If they decide to move forward, there is a formal application letter that requires them to include a narrative, maps, photos, the appraisal, and all the other things that are required in our guidebook. We will review that application and it will be introduced to the Open Space Board at a public meeting. There will not be a situation unless it's very urgent, not be a situation where a project is introduced to the Open Space Board and then voted on by the board for a recommendation of the commissioners. We want applicants to come in, introduce their project, get feedback, leave, and then come back at a subsequent meeting with an ask that the board would act on. Once the board makes a recommendation for the commissioners, it would go to the commissioners for their approval. Typically, they approve recommendations to the Open Space Board at their meetings. And if they do, a grant agreement between the county and the applicant will be put together. And then the open space purchase will proceed towards settlement, and then the grant funds will be dispersed, which is very similar to what we do now.
But Bill, previously, there was a requirement, wasn't there a requirement that the municipality had something in their planning documents, whether it be an open space plan or a part of their comprehensive plan that was required as was a prerequisite to being able to put an application showing that whatever property you're after has some connection with that plan.
Yeah.
The first program had a whole emphasis on what is the right land to protect, so that you weren't getting some person of affluence backyard. Okay, so there was, not only did we want planning for every one of the 62 municipalities, we funded it. We helped fund it with a very, very generous match for every community. We have an open space plan, boroughs and townships, that they had gone through a process either through partnership with the county as planners or with a private planner. And when they came in for their open space, generally, it needed to be in that plan. So I think it was a 25, they only had to have a 25% match, some of these match numbers, but it was a very, very generous match. And sometimes we already had contracts with them. So what happened was everyone had a match in those first years in the 90s. The second time around, when we're only 10 years later into 203, when every community had an open space plan, they might have had to update it. Some properties were sold, some of their connections may become more evident. As the momentum increased, the awareness of how to plan and what they wanted also changed. So the issue is this time around, 30 years later, how do we address the requests that come in to make sure that they are the best use of money? Now, the municipalities have their different evaluations than maybe the county, but that will be very interesting. And some have already done open space plans after that. So some of them are up to date.
They have, yeah, and typically comp plans include information about open space objectives or.
People understand this.
Yeah.
So the appetite we're hoping has been moved along through the community.
That doesn't sound like that's not a prerequisite.
It's not a requirement, Steve, but I will say, so these are the grant evaluation criteria. If you look at number 4, we want to make sure they need to talk about compatibility with local plans or county plans or whatever. So
you're still looking for that integration of a network, of some rationale for them to, and not what Kelsey said, which is just some isolated piece of ground, whatever it may be, selling it off. That doesn't really have a benefit. So you're still looking for the same criteria, you're just not looking for them to immortalize it in some type of plan or anything like this done before it. Okay.
So these are the evaluation criteria. I'm not going to go into detail about these. They're pretty self-explanatory. You know, they need to talk about what the proposed project is, how it's going to be protected. They need to talk about the land's characteristics. scenic features, ecological features, recreation, and so on. You know, what does the proposed future use of this piece of land look like? How do they intend to steward it if they do at all? Sometimes people just protect open space and leave it alone. Some would argue that's bad. I would argue that it's better than housing development, but you know, they need to talk about that. Compatibility with other plans, which we just talked about. Applicants' ability and experience with open space acquisitions. We don't want, you know, if we don't, they need to know what they're doing, and they need to know how to get it done. We will provide, of course, any support that we can, because you know, some organizations don't do this on a regular basis. And so we want to provide that support as needed. They need to talk about the project cost, obviously, and what their matching funds are. They need to also address how this project might address disparities in access to open space. You know, is this in a community that just does not have any open space available to its residents? If that's the case, and they think this is really important for that reason, they need to talk about that. And then lastly, the vulnerability of the land. How imminent or subject to development threat is this piece of property?
Is there specific language that, I think that particular criteria is very important. Obviously, you know, I think you would want to prioritize projects that can demonstrate that there is active, you know, work trying to acquire it, to develop it.
Yep.
Is there specific language about what they need to include to demonstrate that? You know, people can tell you something, but you know, the documentation is important to make sure that that is indeed accurate.
Yeah.
We do ask, is the land currently protected or preserved in any manner? Have development proposals been made for the property proposed for preservation? So we ask them to elaborate a bit.
Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, I'm going to throw it to Ellen. Before I do that, because I'm not coming back up here unless you have questions, I just wanted to thank Ellen and Doug Maisie for all their work on this. It's been a real team effort. I can't take credit for everything in here. Scott's been really helpful in formulating this, so I just wanted to acknowledge them.
So just, good morning, everyone. Just super quick, as Bill was explaining, a really important aspect of this grant program will be getting the word out. That's kind of one of the main points of it, really. And so this whole effort towards marketing, branding, getting that word out is extremely important. So I'm just a super quick, some of the elements. We have developed this program guidebook, and I also want to tell you a little bit about where some of this all comes from. We modeled some of it off of the 2040 implementation grant program, also our past open space grant programs, looking at all that detailed stuff. We also looked at DCNR, their C2P2 requirements, looked to them specifically in terms of cost eligibilities, things like that. So we pulled from a lot of different sources to come up with this, but we tried to keep it pretty concise. It still is a number of pages, but we tried our best, and any comments are totally welcome. So we have this. Anastasia Summers will be giving it a pretty cover. So we look forward to that. So the nuts and bolts, the grant agreement, the declaration of covenants, all of that will be a part of things too. We have developed, Anastasia Summers has developed this flyer. I'm gonna pass these around. And we're planning to send both of these items out with letters to all 62 municipalities, as well as the land conservation organizations that we are known to us, as many people as we can think that might benefit from this. So that will happen in July, August. Bill mentioned the September 1st rollout. So prior to that. So the idea of this flyer is just to catch people's attention and to kind of go through a little bit of the history, the basics of the program, the process, and then on the back, painting a picture, trying to expand that definition of open space. So I'll actually pass these around. You guys can have a little look at those. And what else? Oh, we would very much like to develop a logo, but we haven't been able to do that. Our graphics staff is very busy with 2050. And so that will be a later rollout, probably in the fall, maybe even magnets or things like that to kind of spread the word a little bit more. Social media rollout, our communications team internally, as well as the county, will rely upon them for helping us to get the word out. Doug Mazie and Farida Ahmed have been busy at work developing the program webpage. I think that's really everything. And I guess, next slide, just what's next, we have presented to our open space board. We're presenting to you guys today. We'll go to the Board of County Commissioners next week and get everything together and open the program come September 1. So I think that's it.
How did the open space board,
They have reviewed it.
how did the open space board react to it?
I'm sorry. what-
How did the open space board react to it? I guess they've been involved as.
Positively, they reviewed the draft guidebook, and we actually had a couple of outside reviewers as well, including Dulcie, Drew Gilchrist, Mike Stokes gave it his eagle eye. So we've had some really good feedback and yeah.
I just want to add, when you look at the county's investment in open space since 1993, 94, we're talking, I don't have the exact numbers. We have $100 million and $150 million. Underneath that, there's a certain amount that was spent. It is an extraordinary amount of money. It went to every one of 62 municipalities. It is one place where every citizen in Montgomery County can see a concrete investment in their tax dollars. This is the members of our community seeing where their money goes. And that from a county is really unusual. They don't get to see it. We need to explain that this not only is for recreation, for respite, for health, our trails and our open space in all of our municipalities, pocket parks, large conservation areas, allow people to be outside and be healthier in every municipality. It's an extraordinary investment, and we want to continue that and have it as a culture that is valued and respected for the different choices people make in every one of our 62 municipalities. So I'm extremely pleased that the county's putting their toe back in. I'm somebody who's never, Bill knows I'm never embarrassed to ask for something that's really good when I want a second helping. I think the municipalities with a 25% match this time around are going to see that to get a lot of these projects, they need 3 legs to their stools. They need the county money, they may need state money, and they're going to need local money. Maybe that will encourage them to consider developing their own funding sources, which we have, I don't know if there's 7 or 8 municipalities who went and did that over the years. So they have this money banked for what they want to use it, and it can be for this program, and it will make our investment even more valuable. So thank you to the county, thank you for the staff for spending the time to get this going again. And I think we're really thinking very green, and I think it'll come in many shades, but it's going to be beneficial for all citizens in Montgomery County.
Thanks.
I think the program is well thought out. Bill and Ellen did an excellent job, but I'm really wondering why we're not thinking bigger. I'm really stunned that we have $2 million a year and we can't give it out. And I think that's a marketing problem, not anything to do with the lack of interest, but a marketing problem. My areas in 2050 are conservation and land use. Lots of county will promote, county will support. And I have a question mark after each one, like, how the heck do we do that? How do we support, how do we promote if we don't have some money or skin in the game? So I'm sort of wondering why this isn't a lot bigger of a program. The last time we had a lot of money was over a decade ago. Like, why are we thinking bigger? Is it, and really it's a question, is it not popular anymore? Do people not think about open space or parks? Is it not popular? Is there no places left to buy or, you know, partner with people? I just don't know. I'm really asking a question.
So I think the open space program in the nineties was funded through a bond issue, wasn't it?
Second one, that's two of, the two and three was a bond. First one was just operating expenses for good government.
But I think the problem, and I don't know, I'm always smiling, that probably the county's debt service part of the budget is probably not in a position to take on a additional capital fund, a bond funded cap program like this. So I think they're trying to take it out of available funding.
What was it back in the nineties and early 200s? Was it put to a vote? What I remember?
You guys, I mean, everybody has such, it was, we did polling. We did polling. It was Montgomery County Lands Trust. We raised private money. We did polling. We used a politically focused polling agency, which was a Republican polling agency, so that no one could say that it was one, because we had Republican elected officials. And we got a number back from the polling and survey that 72% of the people in Montgomery County would say yes to raising their own taxes to do this. We had to establish a program to do a referendum. We had to do the marketing and all the outreach, and we went to referendum, and it was 76.8% above what the survey said. So then the county commissioner said, after hearing lots of people say, we want it, they also had surveying that said, we'll pay for it. So they did it. They bonded for it.
Steve, I think Steve hit it right on the debt service, and obviously the county campus is taking up a lot. And my opinion is there's not room or appetite. It's not a priority in front of trying to put this much money in front of anything. But there are other interests, I think, that would also be considered if there was a large bond issue. And this, by reestablishing this, I'm optimistic, and I'm glad that puts this in the conversation for future larger motives or larger programs, but
So
I
I
think
guess
a lot of it's political.
my private vote would be that the marketing that you guys are doing, which seems great, I like that little flyer. Because I have the attention span of a gnat, so I look at this and I think, oh, yeah,
Great pictures.
I like this. So the marketing program is established. Excuse me. Then more applications than your $2 million comes in. And now you can say to people, elected officials, hey, we got a backlog of projects. They're all good, they're all timely. Some may go away if we don't act soon. We need the capital to start promoting, supporting whatever the 2050 plan is going to say we're going to do. So I think that's great. I look forward to seeing the results of the marketing activity.
Other comments from board members?
I know we're up against time, just a quick one. So the $2 million is out of the 3.5 that you currently get out of the operating budget, and the remaining 1.5, it says is toward the county's own fee acquisitions to supplement current open space inventory. Is that, and I'm sorry if I missed it, maybe I did, is that something you do a lot of right now? Do you utilize that 1.5 out of your current 3.5, right now? Or I guess can you just talk about that 1.5 piece?
Yes, we do use that budget, that $3.5 million budget for county acquisitions. It might be an area that's adjacent to an existing county park or just an area that may be good for a county trailhead. I did the math yesterday. I think we've spent about $700,000 over the last 4 years or so on county acquisitions. So again, coming up way short. County acquisitions are kind of like, we're not out actively looking for them. They're more like, oh, this property flooded and the property owner wants to get rid of the property. And oh, by the way, it's adjacent to the Perkiomen Trail and it'd be perfect for a parking lot. So those are more like opportunistic expenditures of that money, but again, way below what the potential and what we have in our purse for it.
And if it sounds like both sides then are kind of undersubscribed right now, but if you're super successful in your marketing campaign and you get oversubscribed from the municipalities on the 2 million, do you have the sort of fungibility?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We have flexibility, and it's capital budget, not a.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good question.
Any other comments from board members?
I have a quick one.
Yeah, Bob.
Quick comment. I noticed it's 25% match. Now, I can't remember the program, but we had a sliding scale for like the municipalities that don't have a lot of money for a match.
Yeah, that's the
Montco 2040.
Right.
That's something we implemented.
So is that something that we could integrate in this particular situation?
We talked about it, and we decided against it. I don't know what the reason was why we didn't go with that. Scott, do you remember what?
Probably more so simplicity to start off. And I don't think we had established, well, yeah, we established how that's what.
Well,
I
the
think
thing,
the the idea here is to have, hopefully have the same progression back at Montco 2040, which is we started with a basic set of rules that we administered the grant program. It grew in size as far as funding is concerned. Then we manipulated, or not manipulated, but we changed the requirements to, to have multi-municipal activity. We changed the requirements for, lesser or more disadvantaged municipalities to be part of the program. So I think to Jonathan and to some of these other comments, I think we gotta take the first couple steps, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it can grow like the Montco 2040 plan. Hopefully we can see how the reaction is from some of these municipalities that may not be able to hit a 25% match. We have to adjust that. And, I think there's going to be a process of seeing these guidelines changing and adjusting to meet the demand and how we see the program being utilized. So.
I'll just point out super quick that we did discuss that, whether we would follow that same path as 2040. And then what we did is included that criteria that if it could give a bump in the project, if it's addressing access disparity. So we put that criteria in as a way to help address providing open space.
I think
that might need it more.
I think the match also is, lets additional items come into that match than we did the first time. So the groundwork that goes into these projects, you're gonna get a little bit more of a match to help you reach that 25%. But that was all, when people did these projects, they didn't realize what the other costs were besides just acquiring the land.
Any other comments from board members before we move on? Any comments from public, anybody online? Public or staff? Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing the results.
Yeah.
I know it was a great thing, and a lot of municipalities took advantage of it, so I hope it catches fire, not in a literal sense.
We don't want to burn it to the ground.
Exactly. Okay, our next agenda item is the Montco 2050 public input summary. I'm gonna call on Austin and David.
This one. Good morning, everyone.
You're cognizant of time. I know you're pushed on the back end, so kind of be Austin and David, be cognizant of time. I want to try to move into these discussion groups and get set up for the rest of the meeting. Okay, sorry.
Yes, yeah, of course. Good morning, everyone. I'm Austin Mosby. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a planner with County Planning. This is my first time up here actually physically presenting, so that's exciting for me. We're going to be talking about our public engagement for Montco 2050, a comprehensive plan for a changing world, where we've been across the county and what we've heard and what lies ahead. So a lot is going into the comprehensive plan. Conversations with the public, our advisory committee, staff input, our boards, community leaders. Today, we're going to home in on what we heard from the general public, both in person and online, and our community leaders, our stakeholders. So why do we do public engagement? Public engagement helps us learn what the community thinks. We get to know our residents. We get to educate residents about planning and local issues. We inform residents of the facts and issues in the county. It shapes the themes and the goals of our plan, and it builds support for the policies and shapes our decisions. I'm going to pass it off now. So we're moving pretty good already, right? I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, David Greenberg.
Thank you, Austin. And so, yeah, I want to go over just our overall engagement strategies. When we
started the process 3 years ago now. As you can see, we really wanted to make sure we're hitting as many different communities as we could. So that meant, going through as many different methods and channels as possible. As you can see, we've done surveys, pop-ups, stakeholder groups, focus groups, interactive platforms, and then we're still working on these today. So that the engagement process is still ongoing. We received a grant from the state from DCED to help with our engagement process, and we also partnered with Connect the Dots to help bolster some of our engagement into the communities. So just first off, going through each platform, SurveyMonkey is one of the early forms of engagement online survey. It was available for almost 2 years, received almost 900 responses. A lot of in-depth questions about major topics there. And Padlet was another early platform that we adopted, kind of a digital, similar to the whiteboard function, allowed for open-ended comments on the major topics. We received 181 responses from them. And Engage Montco, which is still up today. This has kind of been our main interactive platform that allowed us to administer surveys on the major topics, but also allowed participants to create their own forums and topics and posts, and they could comment on other people's posts and comment on maps that were online. So it was really kind of an all-around interactive platform that has about 200 participants currently. We also gave presentations to a number of different groups and boards, authorities. Obviously, this one, you've seen us up here talking about the comp plan. Community groups like the NAACP, Schuylkill Action Network, and of course the county commissioners, staff, among others. And we did many different pop-up events. These are just a snippet of some of the ones we did. We did over 40 of them throughout the county, starting last year or a year and a half ago. This was a great way to just engage with the public face-to-face. And it was also in keeping with reaching different members of the community. It was a great way to engage with children. We had boards for them as well, because they're the ones who are going to be living here, making decisions in the future. So that was important as well. And we, like I said earlier, we partnered with Connect the Dots to help out with doing some stakeholder interviews and focus groups. And this is really where we targeted a lot of groups that are historically underrepresented, marginalized. So we had they helped out with about 8 stakeholder interviews that we met with different community spaces to basically touch on transportation, housing, safety, access to food, and things of that nature. And the focus groups were another key portion. This was a little less unstructured, more of a roundtable discussion where we gathered folks and they could, we would listen to their issues and their concerns. And as you can see, we had touched on a number of different communities in this method, including online for a couple of the sessions as well. And here's just the overall snapshot of where we went throughout the county. So as you can see, pretty good coverage, but like I said, we're still continuing some efforts today, which we'll touch on a little bit in a couple minutes. And Austin is going to go over what we heard from the community.
Yes, and quickly, just gonna go back to that slide. We drove to all these places. It is worth a little, that's a lot. I think that's really commendable. All that work we did over the past few years for that coverage. So now going into what we heard, this is the meat and potatoes of the presentation. What did we hear from the public? I broke this down into 4 categories: community, housing, transportation, and conservation of the environment. They're not one-to-one with the themes of Montco 2050, but for the purposes of this presentation, it was a really easy way to kind of broadly categorize what we heard. So for the next 22 slides, you're just going to read with me all, no, I'm just kidding. This slide is just a great way to kind of show everybody the monumental task of sifting through everything we heard across our online platforms and on the ground, talking with people in the county with our focused groups. It's a monumental task. We sorted through hundreds of comments. You don't have to read them all because we did, but I'm going to just highlight a few that generally speak to a lot of the things we heard. If I can get the animation. There we go. So for this in community, we're going to be talking a lot about third places. We heard from people about what do you like about living in Montgomery County? What do you do to socialize? How do you connect with your neighbors? here we heard a lot about people really like the parks in the town and they like the restaurants and things to do. They want more of those. Am I pointing in the right direction?
You're fine.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Just to highlight where we're going, people want more third places. We heard about, you know, we need more community centers, more places for young people to come together. It's May. It's not that crazy. I'm going to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so we got a sense of how people, why is this so hard? We got a sense of how people feel about living in Montgomery County. Generally, the impression that we got is people like it here. They like living in Montgomery County. I know I do. I did growing up. It was surprising to hear how many people know their neighbors. Very like 62% of people said, I know my neighbors by name. 32% said they can name at least one person in their neighborhood. That tells us that people feel really connected where they live here.
Did you ask people if they don't want to know their neighbor?
You didn't get into like for like. I was gonna say, there's that little line there. There's someone commented. Stephen
Why
Klein
should we
in my
act-
neighborhood.
No, don't put it this way. Okay, point it at Rob.
It's not changing. Is there another way to?
Maybe the battery's dying or something.
Smack it against.
Okay, so as we go through this presentation, we're gonna touch and go on a few different graphs that kind of we pulled all the comments and the online surveys and we tabulated them. So for community here, you see at the top, most responses from our pop-ups and online, people knowing their neighbors. That was really cool. Having a favorite park, place of worship, having good friends within 5 minutes, all good signs of community life in Montgomery County.
If it doesn't work, just let me know. I'll turn it for you.
Okay.
Let me turn it for you.
Oh, there we go. The Survey Monkey, we asked, how important is it to address the following issues? First thing I'll point out, the colors show you what's somewhat important, very important and essential. Across the board, people think all of these issues are very important. The mustard colored green is not important, just for reference. Number one, though, is retain the businesses already here. And the next one down, revitalize our older boroughs and downtowns, reinvesting in those town centers. All of this is important, but that's what they feel is most important.
Was it specific about what type of businesses or just businesses in general?
Businesses in general. I don't think we got any deeper than that.
I was curious to ask that question, because if you got down to it and asked about retail, then follow-up question is how many of you order things online?
Versus shopping local,
Right.
things that you could buy locally.
So the takeaways for the community part, residents care about where they live and they care about the businesses here. There's a need for more free events. We heard that a lot. We need more free activities in our parks and community centers. Third places need to feel safe for at-risk groups. Talk to some people who, particularly like in the LGBTQ community, wanting to feel safe in our public spaces and on our trails. Public spaces need to be accessible. Heard a lot of that, needing more accessible facilities for people of all abilities. And the community resources and activities need to be available for people of all age groups. People were saying, you know, I don't have kids, or we need more things for kids. Or what about, you know, single people? This is more geared towards families. People who are limited English proficient, they face unique challenges in the community that we need to be aware of as we move forward with the plan. What we don't need this thing. Yes, next slide, please. We're going to put that down. Housing. We heard a lot about housing in relation to affordability over and over and over again everywhere we went. And I'm going to just highlight a couple things that I picked out here. Rob, could you click for me? This one, my wife and I are trying to buy our first home and the prices are insane. So many of the homes on the market are huge with giant lawns. All we need is a cheap townhouse, but there are so few of these that they get snatched up immediately. Next for me, Rob. We need 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments costing $1,000. We cannot afford $1,500 apartments, so stop building luxury apartments. We need fewer affordable housing. We need newer affordable housing for 55 up and fixed incomes, also for first-time home buyers. So those are just three I picked out that we heard over and over. Thanks for me, Rob. The landlords charge even more if you are undocumented. We heard that and concerns about people being discriminated against from our LGBTQ focus group. Thanks, Rob. We asked, which policies do you support to address housing affordability? The number one answer had to do with income restricted housing, wanting more of that. ADUs, there was interest, next one down, more than half of the people supported ADUs, backyard dwelling units. And building smaller houses, because the houses are so big, that was another popular one, build smaller houses that could generally cost less. And then the next one, build more housing of all types was the most popular, more popular than breaking it down to build more apartments, but not single family homes, or build more single family homes, build more houses of all types. Another example of everything being important. How important is it to address the following issues? All of it is important. The mustard green shows not important, and they're in the minority. Of these important things, the very most important was encourage housing affordability and encourage a variety of housing types following that. To sum it up, the key takeaways of housing. We need more affordable housing for buyers and renters alike. We hear a lot from housing and buying being too expensive, but we also heard in our focus groups, the rent is high and the application fees are high. We often forget about that. Homelessness and housing insecurity are growing concerns. We heard that a lot. People want more opportunities to own homes. Residents, as I mentioned, some residents did express concerns about discrimination in housing in the county. And people need options to keep their family members nearby. The adult children in your household, can they afford to stay in the community, or do they need to move some other part of the region? Your aging relatives, are there options for them to stay close and have the space they need, like with ADUs could be helpful with that. And family members with disabilities too. If they could stay close, that would be great. So ADUs would be a great solution for that. Next is transportation. My personal favorite. What did we hear about transportation? In the county, we heard over and over, people want more options to get around without having to drive. They want more walkability, they want more sidewalks, they want more transit and regional rail. We heard a lot about wanting 15-minute service and interconnectivity within the county without having to go to Center City. I'm going to highlight just a couple, more sidewalks, more destinations to walk to. I would love to be able to cycle safely out of my borough or to use buses or trains to get around Montco. And these two were about bus stops. We heard complaints about bus stops. Many bus stops are nothing but a sign stuck in a patch of dirt at the side of the road. Transit riders deserve a safe place to stand. And the other one is also about having what transit riders deserve. The bus stops should be better. People shouldn't have to suffer in the elements. Deserve better, they want better.
Let's try to keep moving.
Let's change our car-centric mindset was the overall piece. Yeah, we'll move it forward.
Let's try to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. Okay.
Sure. Pedestrian safety and trail system were the most important when we asked people to prioritize out of 6 options, the top 3. Right. Trails, we heard a lot of great feedback about our trails. The top response on our pop-ups was, I would support a trail proposed in my community. That was really great. Another one, if I had the option, I would use a trail instead of driving at least some of the time. That was great. Our least popular response was actually a great one. I have not used a trail within the past 12 months, meaning everybody there except those folks had used the trail that year. Would you use trails for daily activities? Majority of people said yes or maybe. They would. The takeaways for transportation, people want more sidewalks, more walkability, more public transit. The people love our trails. They want them to be safe and accessible. And we need to prioritize safety for all our road users. We are going to breeze through these. If you hit next, Rob, it'll just highlight 1 or 2. People had concerns about losing open space. People have concerns about there being too much development, too much cluster housing, which contradicts the housing comments. We need more housing, but stop building housing. But this section, yeah, is about concerns about the environment, environmental hazards, and maintaining open space. Suburbs are turning into the city. That's not why we wanted to live here. From our pop-ups, which of the following do you think are the most important benefits of open space? Once again, we asked them to highlight 6 topics that are most important. Number 1, 2, and 3, ecosystem preservation, stormwater and flooding, and having more places to come together and recreate. That's right. Oh, was that a different one?
Yeah.
Did I miss it?
Just the water and air quality one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, just keep moving. Yeah. Survey Monkey, how important are all the following issues? Once again, everything is very important to people, but the most is addressing aging water and sewer and mitigating flooding and other hazards. To sum it up about conservation and the environment, overall residents feel conservation and environmental protection are very important. Residents cherish the county's open space, and they have a lot of concerns about losing open space to new development. And the trail system is how the county residents connect with nature. And that's why they love them so much.
I think we were just talking, I think there's summarized one of the contradictions in all the information you just gave us, which is there's a need for housing of all types, but then there's also people want to preserve open space, that development. And how do you rectify that? Just contradicting views.
Great place of how you arrange the one looks like.
I'm gonna hand it off for the wrap up.
Yep.
My colleague David, take it away.
Oh, yeah, and we're just, we are not done our,
Yeah, sorry?
Thanks for doing that. Quick.
Oh,
yes. And we are, so next steps, we are, working on the draft, crafting the vision, goals and recommendations still, but we're not done with our engagement. We still have 5 more events planned, and of course, Engage Montco is still open to use as well, but over the next couple of months, we have our Pizza with a Planner theme here. We have some events at Hatboro, in Pottstown, at Troubles and Brewing Collegeville in a virtual session, and then capping that off is September 30th at the Ambler Theater.
Is county providing beer at the Troubles and Brewing? Or is that?
No, yes, we will not permit it.
Here.
Fight it in here.
I'll have a beer with Steve off the record.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that's our final engagement steps to really just kind of cap off what we've been doing for 3 years now. So yeah, any questions, comments?
Any comments from board members?
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Good to see all the work that's going into it up until now from public. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, director's report.
I'll keep this super brief, just some upcoming things. Next week, contingent of board members will be joining us for the board tour, for the Montgomery Awards tour, for nominations. They did that, Stephen, Jonathan, Bob. And our board tour for October, we are planning right now. We have settled in on the North Penn region as being the locale. So we've got lots of great projects and sites we're lining up. That will be in October.
We'll be on, assuming it'll be on our meeting.
Correct. And then the August, typically we don't hold a meeting, but I'll leave that as Steve's announcement in the future. The last thing, again, with events, the September 30th town hall is a big deal. We're also going to be celebrating our 75th anniversary at that event. And so the planners, more coming up sooner on July 31st is our Planning Smarter event. Let's get energized. Real excited. I wish we had more time to give you a little more advance on this, but so we're promoting and talking about essentially 3 model ordinances, EVs, building energy sustainability, and solar power, and some related energy transition and renewable talk around. So that's in Lansdale from 4 to 6 on July 31st. We'll go to the end of the meeting.
The August meeting.
I don't.
We'll announce.
Usually
Do we
we
have
say
any,
it now.
do we have any pending?
No.
pressing issues that we have to address in August? I mean, I know that's usually our rationale for having a meeting. Anybody, any of the section chief know of anything pending that's gonna come in front of us before we get to September?
I'm sure I can think of it.
Besides Chloe?
We try to leave that open, and right now I don't see any pressing need.
I'll talk to Dulcie and Scott and get back to the board, but I think at this point, I would think that we need to cancel our August meeting. Although I would love to spend more time with everybody.
Same here. Yeah.
Thanks, Patty. Okay, well, with that, then we will be, then we will, adjourn the meeting, and once again, I appreciate, I know a bunch of you are, if not all, everybody in the room is gonna be involved in these discussion groups related to the Montco 2040 recommendations and so I appreciate everybody's commitment to the time and being here in person.
Because you're fine.
I wish I was. So, thank you. We are adjourned.